And then when I became football watching anything, he was with the Vikings, and I was like, that's me. And then I started playing football. I was like, okay, I'm not fast, so that's out.
Maybe I won't be a wide receiver.
But yeah, I mean, I'm a Hall of Fame wide receiver. I wrote the X-Files. I mean, I got a lot of things on my resume, man. Come at me.
See, that could be useful sometimes.
Exactly, and I tell people, I'm like, man, you never know who I could be today. And it also helps that there's a lot of Chris Carters in the phone book, so if someone was like trying to find me for bad reasons, it would take him a minute.
Yeah. Oh, that's not me. What's going on, everybody? Welcome to another episode of the Donut Bag, part of the Pod Hub Network. In this episode, I talked to Christopher Carter from DK Pittsburgh Sports. We talk about everything Steelers. I think we covered everything you could possibly talk about with the Steelers. The past, the present, the future, everything. We had a great talk. Anyway, the Donut Bag starts right now. Well, besides speeding tickets and trade demands, there's actual football issues going on with the Steelers.
Oh, of course.
With me to talk about it is Christopher Carter from DK Pittsburgh Sports. How are you, sir?
Doing great, man. How are you doing?
I'm great. Usually I do this over the phone, so this is weird doing this in person. But I want to go back to about a year ago.
Sure.
Because this is such a mystery to me. That last offseason, they lost Ryan Shazier. Mm-hmm. Basically torpedoed that season. Mm. But then in the offseason, what do? They get Morgan Burnett, Bostic, they draft Terrell Edmonds. Yeah. What was the plan? What was the plan for the defense? Or what did they envision? How are they going to replace Shazier?
My thing was this: they never intended on replacing Ryan Shazier. None of these guys were coming in to be that spot, to be a playmaker. What they wanted to do, they wanted to bring in more guys to stop the run, because that was the problem. Without Shazier, he filled so many gaps, and even though he might miss them on occasion, he would be there so quickly that people couldn't catch him. Yeah. And John Bostic is that kind. He's a downhill linebacker. He stops the run. And you see, I mean, I even talked to him during the season. I'm like, man, why is your stance so wide? Because if you ever notice, his knees are all the way out. He's super low to the ground, and I never understand. I'm like, doesn't that hurt you? He's like, nah, man, it's just how I approach the game. But when I see that, and you see how he plays and how Morgan Burnett is more of a run stuffer / close quarters coverage guy, I think they were like, look, we're gonna bank. If I'm thinking if I'm the Steelers, we're gonna bank on the on our communication improving, which it did, and for our secondary not to give up the big plays, and for these guys to limit the run enough so that the defense just isn't giving up big plays, and it gives the offense time to score. Which for most part, outside of maybe the Chiefs game, they did that. There were very few games that the defense. I think there was one game where the defense let things get out of hand, and then the offense had to turn on and go crazy. But I think that was the plan. It was never to replace Shazier. It was just, look, this is a stopgap because this year we can't, or they feel like they couldn't get the guy this time around, even though some said they could have traded up to get a Leighton Vander Esch.
Yeah, but it would have been a pretty steep price.
Yes,
they were pretty far back in that first round. Mm-hmm. Did Burnett getting hurt kind of really mess up those plans?
I think it definitely accelerated the development of Terrell Edmonds. Yeah. But I'll tell you this, Edmonds is smart. I talked to this guy during camp, and I talked to him during the season, and one thing I always found interesting was that he had multiple thoughts. He was always, he was never, like a lot of guys you talk to, like for example, I talked to Javon Hargrave. Hey man, he's like, hey, I just brought the guy down, and he's like,
there's a guy to kill. I think I'm going to kill him.
Yeah,
okay, that's it.
But Terrell Edmonds, he's thinking about, he's like, hey, this is the guy we know we're going up against. This is the guy that I have to do this. And like I asked him after I think it was the Panthers game, because I said at that point in the season, I'm like, you have faced the guy that everyone's calling the MVP in Mahomes. You faced an MVP in Matt Ryan. You faced an MVP in Cam Newton. You're a rookie, and you're seeing all these types of quarterbacks, and you're making these adjustments, and for the most part, being in position.
Yeah.
And I asked him about that challenge. He's like, I do think about who's behind the face mask, and he talks about like there's different challenges every week with how I approach that thing. And the fact that he's a rookie, starting and thinking about those things, and still making, he didn't make the big plays, but he's making big tackles. He was being in position. That's a huge sign for them. I think that Morgan Burnett's absence accelerated that kind of growth, and that's where I think the Steelers benefited. But did it stop the plans? Yes, because he was supposed to be the guy that took away tight ends and was the extra linebacker. And when they saw that he wasn't going to be healthy for the beginning of the season, I think Butler and Tomlin sort of sat together and were just like, all right, let's come up with a new way to use our high defensive back packages.
Yeah, for a rookie to come in and play as much as he did and hold his own, that's very impressive. I mean, heck, I remember Troy Polamalu. Mm-hmm. He didn't do anything his rookie year.
Yeah, but a lot of people were mad. They thought he was a bust.
Right. I mean, that's just how it is. Mm-hmm. Speaking of rookies not doing much, James Washington didn't have a great year.
No.
But we got spoiled by Juju.
Yes.
That's what rookie wide receivers do. They don't do much their first year.
Yeah.
But now that it looks like Antonio Brown's going to be gone.
Pretty much.
Do you think James Washington can progress enough to be the number 2 receiver? Or number 3, or however that's going to work out?
I think he can. In fact, I just wrote about this for DK Pittsburgh Sports.com, where it was an article basically saying that Juju's ready to be the leader, but I also graded the rest of the receivers. And James Washington gets like I gave him a C, but the C was a turn-up in the last 4 games of the season. Yes. Because throughout the season, he was running wrong routes. He wasn't contesting catches, which is what they got him for. But you started to see in the Patriots game, in the Bengals game, him working double moves, him figuring out ways to fool guys at the line of the scrimmage to get inside leverage. And those are the little things that Antonio Brown has grown really quickly in, that Juju Smith-Schuster has grown insanely quickly in. Yeah. And if he can continue to work on those aspects of his game, he has to improve his release and get off the ball. That is his biggest challenge. But I think he can make the leap. And what encourages me the most about watching James Washington is to watch how he works. When I saw him in training camp, I don't go to practice during the year because I got another job, but I do. But like seeing him every week and reading up front and talking to Dale Lawley, our beat writer at DK Pittsburgh Sports.com, the guy approaches everything very seriously. He doesn't slack off. He's always looking, and he doesn't, accept excuses for himself. He's looking to improve himself every week. And like when Roethlisberger called him out on the radio show, he said, "Yeah, he's right," and he got better. So I think that he can. Will he? It's just one of those big questions.
They're going to have to do something to you can't replace Antonio Brown, but the wide receiver situation. Do they almost have to go with a free agent? I mean, you can't draft another rookie. And we just said the rookies don't do much their first year.
Right.
They almost have to get somebody.
Yeah. A veteran presence too.
Yeah.
Because this was a theory that Dale and I threw around a few times off camera, was that the only reason Darius Hayward-Bay was even in the room as the Steelers was to have a level-headed veteran in the receiver core that could be in the room. Because that Antonio Brown is Antonio Brown.
Yeah.
And that Juju's really young and impressionable. James Washington's really young and impressionable. Eli Rogers and Ryan Switzer aren't going to impress anybody. And Justin Hunter's just a guy. But Darius Hayward-Bay, he's been around the block a few times. I think that's the issue. So what they do have to do is they have to go out and get somebody. Now, someone that some people talk about right now is Chris Conley. He's going to be a free agent from the Chiefs. He's a deep threat. He's a guy that's shown he can be a decent receiver. If the Steelers go out and get a guy like that, he's an immediate guy. They can at least be the number 2 next to Juju Smith-Schuster. And then that puts less pressure on James Washington to have to be the guy right now.
Yeah.
So I think that, yes, they need to find some guy. It may involve a free agent signing. It may involve a trade. It may involve something, but they can't come into this next season with Juju Smith-Schuster, James Washington, Eli Rogers, Ryan Switzer, and a rookie. Because if that's their 5, they're in trouble.
Yeah. They need at least a speed guy.
Yes.
At least they need the stretch.
And at least a third legitimate threat at receiver. Because Washington still isn't really a threat yet. But you're saying, we're saying, oh, he might become one someday. But when it comes to... if I'm a defense and I'm planning to face the Steelers and Antonio Brown's off the field, I'm throwing a safety over top of Juju Smith-Schuster. I'm getting ready to stop the run and go beat me with Eli Rogers and James Washington until you prove me otherwise.
Right. About Antonio Brown.
Yeah.
I hear that they say he freelances on his route running. Is that what's going on? Is that what happened? That like Ben, whatever route he's supposed to run, he basically runs whatever he wants, and then Ben tries to figure it out, and that's why he has the pump fake, and because he wasn't expecting him to go that way. Because there were so many throws that Ben made that weren't even close,
right?
When that were headed toward Antonio Brown. So, is that really what happened? Or
it's a mix because one, Antonio Brown is often given option routes, and option routes, of course, you can either do a hook or do an out and up. Something that allows the receiver the chance to make the read, and the quarterback just has to trust his eyes and build that relationship with the receiver. Now, and this is where I think the rift is actually coming from with Antonio Brown and the Steelers. A lot of people think it's him getting upset at Juju or because of the MVP vote. I honestly think, and I'll give you my reason why in a sec here, that it really started with the Broncos game when Ben Roethlisberger went on his radio show and Antonio Brown ran the wrong route. And my immediate take on that was, excuse me, but Antonio Brown often adjusts his routes to help you when the defense knows what the Steelers are doing. Like, for example, the Jaguars game. People forgot. They were down 16 points, I think, at one point, and Antonio Brown faked the move, the safety bit, and he took off for a 50-yard touchdown, and that starts this huge comeback. Whereas people get mad at Antonio Brown because he may freelance on occasion, it's because he is a much smarter football player than people give him credit for. Whereas, he makes really dumb decisions off the field. But on the field, the things that I see him notice and the little details and the subtleties of the game, that's where that's what helps make him elite. Because he's not faster than everybody, he's not taller than everybody, but he'll outwork you and he'll know what you're trying to do. That's where I think his elite stuff comes into play. But here's when you're looking at at how all this whole thing played out, and now we're here where Antonio Brown doesn't want to be part of the team. After that Broncos game, then they played the Chargers, remember? And he had a big game. Right. I was sitting in WPXI studios waiting to do the final word show with Mark Madden and John Steigerwald. And we were watching the post-game coverage where Antonio Brown was... in fact, we were just chatting, but I saw Antonio Brown take the podium at Heinz Field after the game. Now, normally, if it's a loss, or he doesn't do well, Antonio Brown either doesn't take the podium or he doesn't talk well on the podium. But that night, he had his kids up there. He was smiling. He was taking questions. And I was like, that's happy Antonio Brown. That's different. And there's times he's seemed okay after a loss. I'm not going to say that that's never happened before, but it seemed like a different level. And I pointed out to Mark Madden, I was like, hey, man, look at that. He's happy right now. And he said, you're right, Chris. And I think at that point, AB was like, look, I'm tired of whatever it is that he's tired of with Ben Roethlisberger. And I do think Ben Roethlisberger, I'm not saying that he's responsible for Antonio Brown's actions. That's ridiculous. People that say that are out of this world. I do think that he has not been the best leader in these times, and I think that sometimes the things that he said have been not 100% true or honest, and like his take on the Broncos game, saying Tony Brown ran too short of a route. I'm like, dude, you threw it to a defensive lineman.
Right.
Yeah,
right.
Yeah, it's for me, I think that Antonio Brown does freelance the routes on occasion, but it's like a given thing. It's like how Troy Polamalu did it for the defense. They just predictably said, we don't know what he's doing, but we know he's going to do something great. And sometimes Tom Brady would rip Troy Polamalu's head off because he would recognize that Troy was out of position and opened up this part of the field. Right. But that's part of the gamble you get when you have one of the greatest players of all time.
Yeah.
Sorry for the rant.
Oh, no, you're fine. You're fine. I think when Todd Haley got fired, Ben had more power. Ben's basically his
immediately.
buddy.
Yeah.
I think he was angry about that. I think he was AV was angry about Ben missing OTAs.
Yeah, he definitely was.
I think he was mad about Ben's day